What if your Retell AI voice agent could instantly access a caller's history, personalize responses, and make smarter decisions on the fly? In today's video, I'm going to show you the 7 different placements you can use in your voice AI agent to take it from basic to brilliant. And I'm going to show you how to implement that using N8N. Before we get started, let's take a look at the documentation provided by Retell. If you've never used dynamic variables, all it is it allows you to inject the information into the prompt or to a piece of the AI agent. For example, the customer's name. The different places that we can use them is going to be the prompt, the beginning messages, custom tool calls, voicemails, and the transfers. We're going to be covering every single one of those use cases in today's video. For inbound, the moment that user gives a call, we're going to have an inbound webhook, and Retell AI is going to send us a request. As part of that request, we're going to receive this information. We're going to have the user's number that they're calling from. We can then use this phone number to match up that customer's details in our CRM, and then we're going to return to Retell this payload with our dynamic variables. When Retell interacts with the user, they're going to have access to this information, and it's going to be a more personalized experience. For outbound, it's going to work slightly different, where you're preparing this data beforehand. We're going to create our variables and send this over to Retell, which is going to initiate the call with the user and then have access to this information. So in a nutshell, that's how it's going to work. Now, we're going to be starting from the very beginning. So make sure that you log into your Retell AI. And once you log in, I'm going to click on create an agent. For this one, I'm just going to create a simple single prompt agent, but this will also work in the other ones. I'm going to click on single prompt. I'm going to click start from blank. And I'm going to paste in a very simple prompt, which will be included with the resources. And let's go back to the documentation. On here, you'll see that there's some system default variables that we can just use right off the bat, which is going to be these 3 as of now. The first 2 are related to a multi-state agent for the current state and the previous states. And again, that just kind of allows you to do something else. And I will be creating a separate video going over multi-prompt agents. So definitely keep an eye out for that one. Now, current time is one of the ones that you're going to be using the most. And let's actually use this one now to see if this even works. And a very simple way for us to test this out to make sure that this default variable is accurate and working, we're going to paste this in the welcome message. I'm going to save this and let's give it a call. So when I call this, it should tell me the current time, which if we look, it's 11:55 a.m. Let's click test.
Hi, Alex. The time right now is Tuesday, February 25th, 2025 at 11 hours, 55 minutes and 49 seconds, a.m. PST.
Perfect. You can see that work. But what if we want to create our own dynamic variable? So that's what we're going to be doing next. Since this prompt is for a medical office, what we want to do is if the caller is an existing patient, we want to grab some information and load it up into dynamic variables. If we have the user's first name, we want the agent to greet the user by the first name. What we're going to do is create our first dynamic variable, and I'm just going to do it after hello, and this could be any greeting that you like. I'm going to type double curly brackets, and we always need to have these double curly brackets at the beginning and at the end, just like that. And in between, we're going to have our variable name. Now, for my variable name, I'm simply going to title this patient first name, just like that. Make sure that you have the double curly brackets. For any spaces in the variable's names, use an underscore, and then close the variable name with the double curly brackets. Now that we created our first variable, let's go ahead and add a couple more. I'm going to add just a context portion here. I'm going to put last appointment notes, and I'm going to create a variable for this. I'm going to start with the double curly brackets there, and I'm going to title this last appointment note, just like that, and then just close that. Now you can continue to create more variables if you wanted. I'll create one more. So maybe I want to get the patient ID number. I'm just going to go ahead and title that. These are going to be my 3 variables that I'm going to start with. I'm going to go ahead and click on save. So what I have here is the last appointment notes. I want to get the patient ID, and then I want to get the patient's first name. Now, you can create as many as you want. This is just 3 of them just to show you how things work. Next, we want to add our inbound webhook URL here. Now, before we do that, we want to make sure that this agent has a phone number attached to it. This is the one that I am working with here. Make sure that you add a phone number to it, because otherwise, if you test out the webhook using a web call, it's not going to work because there's not going to be any user phone number attached to it. Click on your webhook settings. We're going to add a inbound webhook URL there using N8N. Go to your N8N installation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the first step, and I'm going to add a webhook. I want to change the HTTP method to a post request, and I'm going to copy the test URL here. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it in here. I want to make sure that's saved, and I want to test it. Now, I'm not going to test it from here because, again, this is a web call, But before I test it, I do want to make sure that this is listening for events, because if it's not listening, it's not going to receive that data. I'm going to click test. I'm going to go ahead and call. Let's do that now. Perfect. And you can see that was super quick. Now, I don't need to listen to the call or anything like that, because all I need is this data. That way I can start working on my workflow. I'm going to use the from number here to search for the user in the system. Now, here I'm using GHL as the pretend CRM, but this can be anything for you. Because of that, I won't be diving deep into this workflow. I will include it as part of the resources. But here what's happening is we're taking the from number, using that to search for a contact matching that number within GHL. And then if we do find that contact, we want to go ahead and grab all of the notes, then pull the latest note, and then use that information to create these dynamic variables that we're going to be sending back to Retell. Let's start with what happens if the contact is not found. Then there's nothing for us to return. So all I'm doing is returning empty strings. I'm actually going to copy this because I'm going to use this for our patient found. But these variables are the ones that we created back in Retell. If you go to Retell, here's the last appointment note, patient ID, patient first name. Whatever variables you created in the prompt or you added them on there, just make sure that you're providing those same dynamic variables to the response, to Retell. That's what this response is. We're sending that object full of dynamic variables. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go back to the one for the patient is found. I'm going to delete this real quick here. And here I want to use the information that I did get from my CRM to send this information over to Retell. For example, the last appointment note. Here's the last appointment note. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to drag it in here. Now, I do want to delete these quotation marks because I don't need this, since this is not an actual string. Like, I'm taking the value of this. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to pretend that this is the patient ID. I'm going to put that in there. And then last, I want to get the patient's first name. So I'm going to grab the first name and I'm going to drag that in there. Perfect. So I'm going to be sending this data. If I click test, then this information is what's going to be sent over back to Retell. Let's test this out. I'm going to save this. Before that too, I'm going to click on webhook. I want to get the production URL. I'm going to go back to Retell and I'm going to paste that in here. The other thing is here in response, we want to change this to when last node finishes, because otherwise it's going to respond right away and then it's not going to send our custom variables. And then we can go ahead and leave this like that. I'm going to click save. Now let's give this a call. I'm already in GHL. This is the account that it's going to be calling. I have a contact added on here. So it is going to find me, and then this is going to be my medical note. Let's call this. And if we did this correct, what should happen is this should actually greet me by my first name. Let's give that a shot.
Hello, Alex. How can I help you?
Hey, Emma, I need to make another appointment.
Of course. I'd be happy to help you.
Okay. So you heard that it did call me by my first name. And that kind of gives us verification that it is working. Now, another way that we can check, if we go to our call log, I'm going to go to the last call, the one I just made, so we can see that it used my first name. But if we go to data, then you're going to see what was actually provided at the start of this call, which was our last appointment note, patient first name, and then patient ID, which again came from here. What happens if that data is not in the system? I'm going to delete myself from the GHL system. That way we can see what happens when that data is not there. I deleted myself from the system. You can see there's no contacts anymore. I'm going to call myself again. And this time it shouldn't actually say, hi, Alex. Let's give that a shot.
Yeah.
Hey, I need to make an appointment.
Of course. We'll be happy to help you schedule an appointment. Are you a new patient with us, or have you visited Maven's before?
Perfect. So there you go. It didn't say my name. And then it also went into, are you a new patient? So obviously it didn't know. And we can verify that. We're going to go to our call logs. And then we can check the last call here. We can see that there was no data transferred over. It didn't have my name. Then we click on data. We can see that the variables are here, but there was no value with it. So that worked perfectly fine. Hopefully that makes sense in terms of how we can start using these variables to really customize the experience, because you can do anything. This is a very simple approach here to what you can do, but you can send all sorts of information. Hopefully this explains how we can use them within the prompts and then how we can use them within the welcome message. Now, let's go ahead and move on to how to use them within tools. Now, for tools, I updated the prompt here a little bit just so that we actually have a tool call. And if you saw my last video on booking appointments, then this is where prompt is coming from, which will also be included. I will delete this because I don't really need this for this example. So basically in this new prompt, all I'm doing is just calling the function check availability here, which we're going to make right now. And as part of that function, we're going to be using dynamic variables in it. I'm going to copy the name of this function and save this prompt. I'm going to go to functions, add, then create a new custom function. I'm going to give this the same name. For description, this is the name I'm going to give my dynamic variable. And here I need some parameters. Well, actually I need more than just parameters. I also need a webhook. Here, I'm just going to copy one that I have from another NAN workflow. I'm going to paste that in there. We also need our parameters. I'm going to paste one of the schemas from another function that I had previously created in another one of my videos. So definitely check that out. Here, we're going to collect the time that the user wants to check the availability for. So on here, I have the description and I have it hard coded, if you will. If I have a bunch of agents and they all have the same tool call, because it's very likely that a lot of agents, you need to check the availability of the calendar, especially if we use the same systems. So maybe I want to have like a central place to manage them. Let's pretend that I have a Google Sheet maybe, or an Airtable. Here I'm using just a database, but you can use anything. On here, I have my tool, and then I have the description, and then I have the parameters descriptions. Now the benefit, and this is kind of the ways that I'm using, I would love to hear how you're using it, but I'm using this to make it easier to maintain and manage. But if I have a bunch of agents and I'm using this tool in all of them, instead of me having to type it in every time, or when I make a change, instead of having to go on there and update every single one of them, I could just have a central database with this information, pull it from here every time I'm creating an AI agent. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to make an update to this N8N workflow. So what we're going to do is we're going to be pulling this data. In my case, I'm going to be using no code DB here, but you might be using Google Sheet or whatever that is for you. And what I want to do is I want to get that information because I want to create a dynamic variable with that information to pass it over to Retell. So that's what I'm going to be doing here. I made a request to no code, and then I got that title, I got the description, and then the param description. Now, the reason that in this particular workflow, and this is going to be very different depending on what you're trying to do, is I don't care if the contact was found or not found. If they need to have access to that tool, I want to pass on this description. I'm going to go here to my patient not found, and I'm going to delete these. I only need 2 of them, and I want to make sure that they're the same name that I have here. I'm going to copy these over and then paste them on there. And actually, I didn't even create the second one. So I'm going to create this here. I thought I had created this one here as well, but it's not. You don't want that to be hard coded. So let's go create a dynamic variable for this description within the parameters. So here, between the parentheses, I'm going to do my double curly brackets there and then close them. I'm going to name this tool. I'm just going to call this like params description. This is probably not the best description, but just to keep it super simple, I'm going to copy this here and make sure that it's the same in my workflow. I'm going to paste that in there. Now, actually, what I want to do is pass on those values that I got from my database. Again, this could be anything, Google Sheets or whatever that is for you. I'm going to delete these parentheses, and instead I'm going to be adding these variables, which is going to be the description, and then it's going to be the params description. Perfect. And if I test this, we can see what's going to be sent over, which is going to be this check availability description. Then we have this params description. Now, I want to do the same thing for the patient found. If they're a patient, I still want to go ahead and send that information. I'm going to delete this because we were done with that example, and I'm pasting the exact same thing here. So on here, regardless, I want to be able to send that information because they're going to use it. Now, if they did find a contact, maybe I want to do something else and collect more information and send that over. Here, I just want to keep it real simple. I'm going to send the exact same thing over. But let's test this out and make sure that our custom tool actually has access to the information that we're sending here from these dynamic variables. What we're expecting to happen is I'm going to call the AI agent and I'm going to make an appointment. That's when this function that we just created is going to be triggered here. This function should still work because we're passing over the description and then the params description from our database or for whatever it is that you're using. We can see that here. We expect that we're going to be able to call and it's going to check the availability. This function is going to be triggered and it's going to send the information over to this webhook here, which we're going to be listening for the test event.
Thank you for calling in.
Hey, Emma, I want to make an appointment to see the doctor on Monday at 3 p.m. I think I might have fractured my ankle.
Sorry to hear about that. Let me help you schedule an appointment with Dr.
Perfect. So I ended that because we can see that it worked. Let's quickly go through that. I'm going to check the call logs here so we can see because this will give us a better breakdown. If we take a look at the latest call, we can see that the tool was triggered. And then if we look at the data, this is the data that's passed at the beginning when the call is initiated. We can see that we have our check availability and then we have our param descriptions, both of which match what we have here. If I go back to the transcript and then I check at the tool invocation, we can see that the appointment time was collected in the format that we requested. And obviously there was no result. I'm not entirely sure what was sent back, but we don't have to worry about that. We can see that we got the information that we wanted and all this was from here. So maybe now we want to change this up a little bit. Let's say like the description. Maybe I don't want it in this format anymore and I want it in Unix. Instead of me having to go to every single AI agent and change it, I can just simply maintain it from one central place. I'm going to test this again because it should go from ISO 8601 to Unix. We want to make sure that it's actually working and that it's pulling in the data correctly. Let's give this a call.
Thank you for calling Nathan. This is Emma. How can I help?
Hey, Emma, I need to make an appointment to see the doctor. I think I might have fractured my ankle. Can you check for Tuesday at 10 a.m.?
I was able.
Perfect. There you have it. You can see that was correctly pulled from the database here. And we should also see the value being formatted as Unix instead of this format. So we got the tool invocation here, and then the date that was passed, it should be in Unix now, which is just going to be a bunch of numbers. So if we go back and we check the tool invocation, there you have it. So in Unix, and then there we have the updated descriptions. That's pretty much how that works. I would love to hear how you're using that. That's kind of one of the ways that I'm using them, having like a central place to manage all your tools and all your functions and the descriptions that go with that. There might be better ways to handle that, but I would love to hear how you're using that. Now let's move on to transfer calls and how we're going to work with dynamic variables in the transfer calls. And then lastly, we'll go over the outbound agents and then dealing with voicemails. Now we're going to work on the transfer call. And before we do that, let's update our prompt. I'm just going to add a fourth step here, which is going to be if the user wants to be transferred, call the function transfer call. Very simple. Now we want to create the actual function here. I'm going to click on add and then call transfer. I'm going to leave the name as is and then the description as is. You can also use dynamic variables here in the description, just as we were doing for the other custom tools. I don't think it's like super helpful in this one. I think the main place that you want to use it for is going to be in this transfer. You can also use it for the warm transfer message, where we're going to be testing out here shortly. Now, this is very useful if you want to transfer someone to a different person or a different staff member, depending on who they are. For example, in a medical office setting, if they're a new patient, maybe you want to transfer them over to one staff member. If they're an existing patient, you want to transfer them over to someone else. Or sometimes maybe they're a provider or a health partner or another doctor. You want to transfer them over to maybe an administrator versus passing them over to the front desk receptionist. So that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be creating a dynamic variable, and let's just do that now. I'm going to title this transfer number. And what I'm going to be doing is, depending if they're a new patient or existing patient, they're going to be transferred over to one number or another. And what I have here is these two other AI agents with phone numbers. One of them is going to be a podiatry and one of them is going to be a medical receptionist. So if they're a new patient, they'll be transferred over to the podiatry, and the existing patient, they're transferred over to the medical receptionist. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's just so for you to see. I'm going to go back to my end-to-end workflow. And what I want to update the patient found and then patient found. And obviously you can do more stuff to it, but here I'm just going to update this. I want to delete the previous values that I had, and I'm just going to delete all of this. We don't need it. I'm going to change the name of the variable to whatever I labeled here, which is going to be transfer number. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to paste it into my end-to-end workflow here. I want to make sure that I add my quotes here, and I want to put the phone number from the agent. So this one is going to be for new patients. I'm going to go back. I'm going to paste that in there. I'm going to delete all the dashes and just leave just like that so that there's no spacing. And I'm going to copy this. I'm actually going to delete that comma. I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to go to my patient found, and then I'm going to paste that in there and then just change the phone number, because this is going to be the other phone number here. So I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to paste this in here just like that. Perfect. So now I'm going to save my workflow. And what's going to happen is I'm going to call. It's going to check GHL, which in GHL, I am not a contact. You can see on here that I'm not a new contact or anything like that. So it should transfer me over to the podiatry receptionist. So to the other podiatry agent, which is going to be this 410 number. Let's call this, and I expect to be transferred over to a podiatry receptionist. So we click on this agent, we should be greeted with, "Thank you for calling Apex Foot and Ankle Institute."
Thank you for calling, Megan. How can I help you?
Hey, Mike, can you transfer my call, please?
Please answer your call right away. Thank you for calling Apex Foot and Ankle Institute. This is Sarah. How may I help you?
Perfect. So we can see that that worked. Let's take a look at the call log now. If I click on, let's see, we have a couple of them here. So this was me. Can you transfer the call, please? It did transfer the call. If we take a look at the data, that variable was properly transferred over. So that's working just fine. And then if we look at this other one, we should have one here. It is this 410 number. Here I called it and then I just hung up. We can see that actually worked properly. So now I added myself as a contact in GHL. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call, and now it should actually transfer me over to another agent, which is going to be this dental receptionist. So this 395 phone number, if I click on it, it should greet me with, "Thank you for calling Impressions Dentistry." Let's give it a shot now. And this is happening because we added that phone number. This is the other phone number for me to be transferred over to if I am an existing patient. So let's give it a call.
Thank you for calling. Emma, can I help you?
Hey, Emma, can you transfer my call?
Can you transfer your call right away? Thank you for calling Impressions Dentistry. This is Mia speaking. How may I help you?
Perfect. So there we have it. That worked. And it did transfer me over to the other receptionist, which should have answered with, "Thank you for calling the Precious Dentistry," which she did. If we take a look at those call logs, we can see that the call was transferred. It even tells right there, call transferred. The tool call one successful. And then if we look at the data, it transferred over that new number. So you can see that that works and it's pretty straightforward. The other place that you can use that is during a warm transfer. You could add a variable on here during the handoff message that we can put. And we'll quickly just create this. I'm going to create another variable and I'm just going to put transfer message. I feel like by this point, you kind of get the idea. All I got to do is literally create. I'm going to update that. I'm going to go back and in my workflow, I'm just going to add another variable. I'm going to add a comma there and then put that variable name. And I want to give this a value what that transfer message is going to be. So maybe for patient not found, I'm going to put this as a new patient. I'm going to copy this same thing over and I'm going to go back. I'm going to update my patient found and I'm just going to title this as an existing patient. I'll go ahead and leave that there and I'm going to save this. Now I have it here as a prompt. You could add it as a prompt or a static message. Obviously it's a static message, just going to read it just exactly as you write it. And if it's a prompt, it's going to interpret it as obviously as a prompt. Here, I'm just going to use static message. I'm going to update that and then I'm going to give it a call one more time here and it should just say that I'm an existing patient because it found me in the system and we should be able to see that transfer call message there. I'm going to call.
Thank you for calling Aiden. This is Emma.
Hey, Emma, can you transfer my call, please?
It sounds like you'd like to be transferred. Let me take care of it for you. One moment.
So,
Letting me know.
so there you have it. That's why I don't like the whole warm transfer. I'm not sure if you heard at the end there, like they're both talking because one of them is answering the phone. But if we take a look at the call logs, that message is being passed over there. So if we see call transfer here, we can see this is an existing patient, which is the exact same thing that I had in my workflow here. Hopefully you get that. The last thing we're going to be going over is going to be voicemails and using dynamic variables within the voicemail. Now I know this video is kind of long, so thank you for joining me if you made it this far. All we're going to do is on our same agent, I want to change this welcome message to let the user initiate the conversation there because we're going to be calling them. So we want them to say, hello. I'm going to click on call settings and I want to make sure that voicemail detection is turned on. I'm going to click on this. And for the leave a message, this is where I want to add my variable. I'm going to erase that and I'm going to create a dynamic variable here. And I want to title this voicemail message. Perfect. So now I'm going to save this and I want to go back to my N8 and we're going to be creating a new workflow. You can trigger this many different ways depending on how you're using this system. For this one, I'm just going to trigger it manually. So all I'm going to do is add a manual trigger. I'm going to click on the plus and I want to make an HTTP request. Obviously, before this, you want to format the data and you scrape the data. You did whatever you had to do to prepare your data. Now it's time to actually make that outbound call and send those variables over to Retell. And I'm going to go back to Retell's documentation. If we take a look at for outbound calls, it says use to create call API. If we click on that, it's going to take us here and it tells us everything that we need to send over to initiate this as an outbound call. And part of what we're going to be doing is passing over some dynamic variables for the AI agent to use. Let's go ahead and do that. If you click on the try it, it's going to pull up this window where you can actually make the request from here. We'll prepare the request here, and then we will also take this over to N8N. The first thing that we need to do is get an authorization token. That's going to be our API key. from Retell. If I go to Retell and I click on keys, here you can see that I made this YT API key. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it. For from number, I'm going to copy my agent's phone number. I'm just going to paste that in here. And then to the number, that's obviously going to be the number that you're going to be calling. So the customer, the patient, whoever that is, I'm going to paste that in there. And then we have this agent override ID. All I'm going to do is copy my agent's ID, the one that we're going to be using here. You can see this is the one with the dynamic variable. I'm going to paste that in here. I tried this without it, and for some reason it wasn't working. So that's why I'm pasting that in here, even though it says that it's not required, just in case you're wondering. And then one of the things here is going to be our dynamic variable. So I'm going to click on create new, and I'm going to type the name of that property. I'm going to copy this because I want to make sure that I spell it the same way. I'm going to go back. I'm going to add the property here. I'm going to paste that in there, and then I'm going to select enter. And now it lets me add something there. Here, I'm just going to add the simple message. This is maybe foot and ankle. Please give us a call back. You can go ahead and put anything, and you can literally go ahead and send this. And what's going to happen here, this is going to initiate a call. Let's click that. The call was created. We can see the information that was sent over. So we sent, and you can see it's actually calling my phone. I'm going to ignore it. So that way it's going to leave a message. And you can see that we're using that agent's phone number here. We're calling the customer. We're giving it that agent ID. And then we passed over this dynamic variable, which has this value. This is made from foot and ankle. Please give us a call back. So that's the way that's working. And we can actually recreate this in NIN. But before we do that, I'm going to go back to GHL here. And we can see that we have the inbound call, and then there's the message. Let's listen.
May foot and ankle, please give us a call back.
And there you have it. There's the voicemail that I left, and the voicemail is exactly the same thing that we added in this variable. Now, obviously, you're not going to be making the calls in this interface. So let's go ahead and take this same thing over to NIN. Now, the reason that I use this is because it gives us the request right here. So it's easier for us to duplicate this in NIN. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to put this side by side. I'm literally just going to copy and paste. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller here. We're going to be making a post request. And let me just take a look. What I want is this curl right here. We have a post request. It's going to go to this particular URL. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste that in there. For authentication, I'm going to put none, but I'm going to send headers. And then for the headers, we're going to have authorization. And then I'm going to copy this whole bearer key. Now, obviously, you want to make sure that you keep your key private. I'm going to delete this after this video, but you want to make sure that you don't share that with anyone there. I'm going to send this content type. Perfect. And then I'm going to add a body. And for my body, I want to use JSON. And then I just literally want to copy all of this. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to copy all of it. Perfect. And then I'm going to paste it in there. I'm going to make this a little bit longer just so we can see the difference. Now I'm going to make the call from here. So everything is there, my body, my request token. I'm going to click test. And this is going to give me a call again. I'll go ahead and ignore it. And then that's going to go to voicemail. And then we're going to listen to that voicemail. Let's go back to GHL, and I should have another call with another voicemail, this time being the updated voicemail. So now if we listen to it, and you can see that it's already longer.
This is Emma from May Foot and Ankle. Please give us a call back. We are open today till 5 p.m.
Perfect. So you can see that's a message that was sent over from Retell. And that's one of the ways that you can customize that. If you are a medical practice or a different type of business, you can leave customized voicemails by triggering this from your workflow, from your CRM, from whatever you're using. And there you have it. I hope this video was helpful to unlock the full potential of Retell AI agents. If you found this content valuable, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Now, I know implementing some of these solutions can be difficult. If you need expert guidance, click on the description and book a call. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.